Well, on the very front page of the Hindu, we had a news article about uh, the the new president of India being elected, the 15th president, Droupadi Murmu. Now, Droupadi Murmu has now become the 15th president of the country, and after a third round of voting, she has been declared the winner. Now we must understand that in this sense, she has become the first tribal woman to be appointed as at the post of president. So first tribal women to be elected as the president of India. Number one. Number two, she is the youngest president to be elected to this office. So there are two important takeaways. Now, Draupadi Murmu comes from the tribal community, which, as far as the government definition goes, is called as scheduled tribes. Now she comes from Santhal tribe community, and they are basically spread in the northern part of Odisha and some regions of Jharkhand, the hilly regions. Was also former Jharkhand governor, and mind you, she was the first governor of Jharkhand, to complete the full 5 year term. I mean, no other governor of Jharkhand is able to complete the full 5 year term, and she was the first governor who completed the full 5 year term in the office as governor of Jharkhand. Now, after the four rounds of counting, earlier I said three, correct me, it's four rounds of counting. She crossed the halfway mark. Now, halfway mark is the electoral quota to decide the winner of for the presidential elections, right? So the moment you cross the electoral quota, you would be declared as the winner for the presidential race. And in our previous lecture, when we talked about the method of election of president, we did discuss about the single transferable vote, the method of election, and the electoral quota as mentioned in the constitution. Now, as you can see, Ms. Murmu received 2,824 votes of 6,76,803 value. Right? And the returning officer was the Secretary General of Rajya Sabha. And moving to the next slide. Now, when she was acting as the governor of Jharkhand, she was known for various movements for the protection of the rights of tribal community, and she rightly stopped the amendments to Chota Nagpur Tenancy Act. Now, students, Chota Nagpur is a region majorly located in the present southern Jharkhand, and the northern part of it is spread across West Bengal as well as the northern part of Odisha. Now, Chota Nagpur is region is being inhabited by many tribal communities like Gond, Santhals, so on and so forth. And a tenancy act, Chota Nagpur Tenancy Act, was being passed by the government, and it involved changing the land use in the tribal areas. So she protested that act, and because of her intervention, it was successfully being clamped down by the government. I mean, she didn't allow the government, going ahead with Chota Nagpur Tenancy Act. So a very big achievement as a tribal leader. Now, the elections have seen, a large scale cross voting of the votes in her favor across the party lines. So in this sense, she was able to win votes even from the opposition party. So there are 17 MPs and 126 MLAs, who had voted from opposition party who had voted, for in favor of Draupadi Murmu. Now, again, there was an article in the editorial section that is it, her escalation to the post of presidentship, does it mean that the rights of tribal people would get due attention? So it is being believed that it is a silver lining, and there are many because the tribal communities are being harassed, they are being persecuted. There is a systematic erosion of protection accorded to tribals. and there is general intolerance of the government towards tribal autonomy. So therefore, her escalation, elevation to the post of presidentship means more attention on the rights of tribal people. Well, in the constitution, we do have fifth schedule and the sixth schedule, which talks about the administration of scheduled areas, the 10 scheduled areas mentioned in the fifth schedule, and sixth schedule talks about the administration of tribal areas across the four northeast states, which we'll discuss in the coming slides. Now, there were many tribal leaders even in the past, like Jaipal Singh Munda. Now, Jaipal Singh Munda was a prominent member of Constituent Assembly. He was a sportsman and a tribal leader, and he, forcefully articulated the fears and hopes of tribal people. At the same time, we know that the government in 2006, my bad, also enacted the Scheduled Tribe and Other Traditional Forest Dwellers Act, which was passed in 2006. But then there are many loopholes in this act. So Murmu's election is now is a milestone in the journey of tribal empowerment. Well, we'll be understanding a few aspects about the tribal the tribes and how the government identifies them. Well, guys, tribe is different from scheduled tribe because tribe is a social cultural dimension. You must understand it. Whereas scheduled tribe, the word schedule is a government connotation. It has more politico administrative implications, right? So tribal is different from scheduled tribe. Scheduled tribe means something which is being designated in the government list to be a tribe which is being notified by the government, right? The scheduled tribes. Now the scheduled tribes or the ST population is majorly concentrated in the northern in 9 states as well as the northeast states, like Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, and many northeast states. Well, we must understand that the constitution does not define the criteria for recognition of scheduled tribes. Means constitution is not defining, the criteria for recognition of scheduled tribes. However, there are some articles, which define scheduled tribe, but they do not define the criteria that ये this is the criteria to recognize scheduled tribe. Are you getting my point? तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में ऐसा कोई भी प्रोविजन या आर्टिकल नहीं है which would be defining the criteria for recognition of scheduled tribes. So there are some articles which just define scheduled tribes without actually, putting down the guidelines for or the criteria for the recognition of scheduled tribes. So Article 366, Clause 25. Now, Article 366 students talks about the definitions of various terms which are mentioned in the Constitution. So Article 366, Clause 25, defines scheduled tribes as such tribes or tribal communities or parts of or groups within such tribes or tribal communities as deemed under Article 342 to be scheduled tribes for the purpose of this Constitution. Now, Article 342 is the major is the most important article in the Constitution talking about the scheduled tribe. It defines scheduled tribe as those which are being declared by the president on the notification of the governor. That means the governor would notify that this and this community from now onwards would be called as scheduled tribe, and then the president would issue the order. So it is mentioned in Article 342 of the Constitution. So Article 366 also calls Article 342 only. Now, moving ahead, there are 5 critical issues which are being confronted by the tribal communities in India. The first is livelihood and employment. Second, education. The third is health. Fourth is their displacement, right? Because there are many industrial projects which are coming up in the forest areas. Because the Chotanagpur Plateau and Jharkhand, Odisha, they all are mineral reserves. They have huge mineral reservoirs, right? So you would be knowing that those are the plateau region, and they have even till West Bengal. You have very good mineral reserves in those regions. So therefore, many factories and industries are coming up, and this has resulted into displacement of the tribal communities. So that is also a very important issue confronting the tribal communities in India. And fifth is definitely the legal and the constitutional matters. Now, a committee was being formed to look into these issues, the above mentioned issues, and it was being headed by a bureaucrat, Zaza, and it's also famously referred as Zaza Committee on Tribal Communities of India. Very, very important. So they may ask you this question: which among the following committee talks about was formed on the to resolve the issues confronting the tribal communities in India? So it is Zaza Committee. Well, within tribal groups or scheduled tribes, there is a separate group called as particularly vulnerable tribal groups or PVTGs. Now, particularly vulnerable tribal groups are is being classified by the government of India, and they are those tribal communities within the major tribal communities which require special attention because of their very extremely low development indices, right? So their development indicators are very, very low, and they are poorest among the or most deprived among the tribal communities. Getting my point? So PVTG. Now PVTG was earlier called as primitive tribal group, and mind you, it is a government of India classification. So it is not some thinker, etc., have said this or mentioned it. It is the government which classifies the most deprived communities in the tribal group as PVTGs or particularly vulnerable tribal groups. Now, this this group is or this classification was created based on a report of a commission called as Debar Commission Report of 1960. Now, this report stated that within scheduled tribes, there existed an inequality in the rate of development. That means there are some scheduled tribes which are, when compared to the other scheduled tribes, their development indicators are far better against those who are highly deprived. Getting my point? So the percentage of the level of development is differs even in the tribal communities. Now, talking about the schedules mentioned in the constitution. Now, fifth schedule and sixth schedule. Guys, we know that fifth schedule talks about the administration of scheduled areas, right? Those areas where, for example, those states where some regions are have a substantial tribal population, and the government comes up with various measures to actually resolve their problems. So fifth schedule has talks about the administration of scheduled areas, and the 10 states are being identified to be in the list of scheduled areas. That is Andhra Pradesh, for example, Rajasthan. In Rajasthan, the southern Rajasthan, especially uh, Dungarpur, Banswara, Pratapgarh, and the southern part of Udaipur, has tribal population. So that part is also called as scheduled area. Similarly, 10 states are Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Gujarat, Himachal, Jharkhand, MP, Maharashtra, Odisha, Telangana, and Rajasthan. Right. Now, sixth schedule is different from fifth because sixth schedule talks about administration of tribal areas, right? Which are those states which have almost more than 50% of the population, tribes. So there are four states in northeast which comes under sixth schedule. That is Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram. So all the tribals living under in these four states are being administered by the sixth schedule of the constitution. They are being protected by sixth schedule of the constitution. Now, these areas are being notified by the governor, and then based on the notice of the governor, the president takes the action. Correct. So, based on sixth schedule, 10 autonomous councils exist in these four states of Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram. Right. So there are autonomous councils being set up. Now, this special provision is provided under Article 244, Clause 2 and 275, Clause 1 of the Constitution. Right. So we must be clear about the fifth schedule and the sixth schedule. So these are the two schedules among the 12 schedules in the Constitution of India. Well, if I talk about the Santhal tribe, we must be aware of the fact that it is the third largest tribal community in India after Gond and Bhils. Well, Gond and Bhils are the largest tribal communities in India, followed by Santhal. Right. So the third largest tribal community in India, are Santhal tribes. Well, they are basically, scattered on the Chota Nagpur Plateau, southern Jharkhand, and the northern part of Odisha. And during the colonial times, it was also called as Santhal Parganas of Bihar, and then they came to Odisha. Correct. They speak Santhali, and mind you, Santhali is a scheduled language. It's a scheduled language, recognized by the Constitution under 8th schedule. Because 8th schedule talks about the languages, right? So today, can you tell me how many scheduled languages are there in Indian identified by the Indian Constitution? Give your answer in the comment box quickly. How many scheduled languages are there in Indian Constitution? All right. So there are 22 scheduled languages at present in the Indian Constitution, and the first scheduled language to be added in the Indian Constitution under its schedule was Sindhi. Getting my point? So originally there were 14 languages, and because there were initially 14 states being formed based on the language, and after 1956, that means after the State Reorganization Commission of 1956, 8 more languages were added into the list of scheduled languages, right? And the first language to be added after those 14 languages was Sindhi, right? So in this sense, Santhali is also a scheduled languages, one of the scheduled languages among 22 scheduled languages mentioned under 8th schedule of the Constitution. And the script it follows is Old Chalki, and this script was invented by Pandit Raghunath Murmu. Moving ahead. Well, students, after the election of the new president of Sri Lanka, that is Ranil Wickremesinghe, Dinesh Gunawardena is likely to be named as the next Sri Lankan Prime Minister in the crisis-driven Sri Lanka. Well, we know that Sri Lanka is being, undergoing huge economic crisis, and it resulted into various protests, which forced the erstwhile president Gotabaya Rajapakse to resign from the office, and he fled to to Singapore because he was denied visa by United States and many Middle East countries, and now he's being living in residing in Singapore, and even the Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapakse also resigned. Right. So a new government is being formed. Now it is being presided by the president of Sri Lanka. New president of Sri Lanka is Ranil Wickremesinghe, and the likely prime minister would be Dinesh Gunawardena. So this is also the news which you have to note down. Now moving ahead. Well, recently after the bail order which was issued for Mohammed Zubayr, the talks are being going on for free speech and whether do we have protection of free speech in our country. Because if political dissent, if criticizing the government is also being considered as a restriction under Article 19 Clause 1, which is freedom of speech and expression, then there is no point of having a freedom of speech expression as a fundamental right. So therefore, these days, the distinction between dissent, political dissent, and hate speech is getting deliberately muddied. So even the political dissent or criticism against the government is also being, categorized as hate speech, and this, students, is setting a dangerous precedent for the for the democracy, and it definitely indicates the death of democracy or the democratic fabric of country. Well, how hate speeches continue to hold sway despite its 2017 judgment in Tehseen Poonawalla case, as highlighted by a petitioner. Because in Tehseen Poonawalla case 2017, the apex court, called for zero tolerance for hate crimes. So it clearly, came up with the directions for zero tolerance for hate crimes. That means there must be no tolerance for hate crimes in India. It directed Supreme Court directed all the state governments to form special task forces to prevent hate crimes. Getting my point? So if hate speeches continue to hold sway in our country despite of Tehseen Poonawalla judgment of 2017, then it is a dangerous indicator. Right? So therefore, the Supreme Court is asking for clarification of the actions taken against hate speech from the government. Right? So in this sense, an important article. Moving ahead, a good news coming in. Well, Karnataka has topped the Niti Aayog Innovation Index. Well, Niti Aayog conducts innovation index and it ranks those states who excel in the innovation parameters, and therefore it is an annual process. Now, Karnataka has topped the Niti Aayog Innovation Index list in the major states category. If I talk about the hilly states category or hilly states category, Manipur has topped the list. If I talk about union territories and the city states category, Chandigarh has topped the list. Right. So there are three takeaways. In the Niti Aayog Innovation Index, the major states category, Karnataka has topped the list. In hilly states category, Manipur, a northeast state, has topped the list. In union territory and the city state list, Chandigarh, which is a union territory, has topped the list. Now, the states of Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Bihar, and Gujarat are at the bottom of index. Now, the commission, the Niti Aayog, also has explored many areas. It has found that there has been increase in GDRD. That means India's GDRD. GDRD is gross domestic expenditure on research and development. Now, it was being found by Niti Aayog that India is not investing in research and development, and that is the reason why we are lacking in innovation. However, we know that Karnataka, which has Silicon City, Bangalore, which has all the IT, also called as IT hub of India, and it has many multinational companies, and that's the reason why it tops the innovation index of Niti Aayog. Well, the Niti Aayog also has explored that India's GDERD, which is gross domestic expenditure on research and development, is dismally low. And as a percentage of GDP, it is just 0.7%. Now, when you compare it with other countries like United States and UK, the GDRD contribution to their GDP is very, very high. Right? So therefore, Niti Aayog concluded that the contribution of research and development in the GDP has to be at least 2%, right? In order to achieve the dream of $5 trillion economy, by 2025. So it is stressing on the increase in the research and development. And it is also stressing that the public expenditure must be, must be accompanied with the investment by the private sector. That means the research and development should mostly be driven by the private sector. Correct. So this is the article all about, and a very important one, very important for all the students. Moving to the next news article on the screen. Well, Russia, which is we all know that the brutal invasion of Ukraine, which started on 24th of February, is not ending. The war is not ending in Ukraine. And recently, we all would be knowing that Russia has almost 40% of natural gas reserves of the world. And it supplies natural gas to various European nations. And the major client of Russian natural gas is Germany, because many facilities and industries and factories in Germany consume the natural gas sold by Russia. Now, you all would be knowing about Nord Stream gas pipeline. Yes, Nord Stream gas pipeline were the two important natural gas pipelines. The first gas pipeline, Nord Stream gas pipeline 1, was completed in the year 2011, and the second completed just last year, September 2021. Now, this is how the natural gas is being transported from the Russian oil fields, natural gas fields. And the blue line is for the Nord Stream gas pipeline 1, and the dotted orange line is for Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. So Nord Stream 2 runs from Vyborg to Greifswald natural gas field, and the second runs from Ust-Luga, to Lubmin in Germany. Now together they share around 110 billion cubic meters or BCM of gas a year. Getting so that means in a year these two gas pipelines are supplying 110 billion cubic meters of gas every year to Europe. And it has the capacity to supply for at least 50 more years. Right. So in this sense, it is a very, very big, uh, uh, natural gas pipeline. Now, after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Russia threatened to cut off the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. And in fact, even the United States, put various sanctions on Russia. And one such sanction or threat was also to cut off Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. But Germany didn't wanted it because Germany is heavily dependent on Russian gas. Well, recently in the last week, 10 days back, the Russian government cut off the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline in Germany, right? And they said that there is some maintenance work going on, and therefore they decided to cut off the natural gas pipeline. Well, Germany was very much fearful, and in fact, it accused Moscow of using energy as a weapon. Although it is now being restored, it is being resumed. But Germany has, all the fear that Russia may, cut off the natural gas, especially in retaliation for the Western sanctions over the war. Right. So this article is also very important. We have understood the Nord Stream 1 and the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. And very, very important, student, see the geostrategic location. It runs through the Baltic Sea. Getting so Russia, and this is the white region here is Baltic Sea. So this gas pipeline is running through the oceans in the Baltic Sea to Germany and to various other parts of Europe. So in this sense, the Nord Stream crosses EEZs or exclusive economic zones of Russia, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and Germany. Well, in Germany, the pipeline connects to the UPAL and NEL, which further connects to the European grid. Right? So that means in Germany there are already pipeline structures being laid down in the form of UPAL and NEL, which further connects the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline to various to the European grid. Well, almost 40% of the gas, the natural gas in Europe comes from Russia. So European continent is heavily dependent on Russia for its natural gas requirements or needs. And in this sense, Russia students, as I just said, is the largest natural gas reserve in the world, and around 40% of its budget comes from sales of gas and oil. The Nord Stream 2, the best advantage of Nord Stream 2 is that it is running from the Baltic Sea, right? And in this sense, it results into the cut in the operation costs. Because if it would be running from the countries, then it would have to, give the transit fees. It have to pay the transit fees, right? So that transit fees is now being eliminated, right? So therefore, it has become a cheaper source. So an important article. Moving to the next news article. Well, this article also surfaced in the Hindu. Now, this article talks about the right to safe abortion. Well, students, we must understand that abortion is being regulated under Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act 1971 or MTP Act 1971. Now, recently a case happened where a woman, wanted to abort her 24-week pregnancy after her relationship failed and her partner left her. So they were, living in together, and it was not a married couple. And after 24-week pregnancy, her relationship failed and her partner left her. Now this woman wants to abort the pregnancy. Now the lower courts, when she approached the lower courts denied it, saying that such abortions are not covered under MTP Act of 1971, as this pregnancy has arisen from a consensual relationship outside the wedlock, because the partners were not into the marriage relationship, and the pregnancy arose from a consensual relationship, and therefore the lower court actually, did taken a took a kind of restrictive view, right? It didn't entertain the petition filed by the women. Women approached the apex court, Supreme Court. Now, Supreme Court said that women has every right of safe abortion, and denying an unmarried woman the right to a safe abortion violates her personal autonomy and freedom. And in this sense, Supreme Court made it very clear that irrespective of the married status of a woman, she has every right to safe abortion, right? And if you don't give this right to that woman, it would be violating her personal autonomy and freedom, fitting, and which is again a part of first fundamental right, Article 21, right to life and liberty. Right. So the apex court also said that we have already identified, living relationships. They are already being legalized and recognized in India by Supreme Court, and there is no wrong in engaging premarital sex as far as the court order is concerned, right? And therefore they say that any abortion of even of unmarried women is legally right, and such women have every right to safe abortion. Now the court also noted that an amendment was made to the MTP Act. You would be knowing that MTP Act of 1971 was amended in 2021, and it had substituted the term husband with partner, right? So जो पहले term husband थी उसको substitute करके partner बोला जा रहा है आपसे, right? In this sense, it is a clear signal that the law covered unmarried women within its ambit. Getting my point? So when the MTP Act or Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, so in the earlier MTP Act of 1971, any consensual relationship outside the wedding, outside the wedlock, such abortions were illegal as far as the 1971 Act is concerned. But the amendment to 1971 Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act, has substituted the term husband with partner, right? And in this sense, it is a clear signal that the law has covered the unmarried women within its ambit, right? So a woman, Supreme Court says, has every right to the reproductive choice, and this is an inseparable part of her personal liberty under Article 21. The court also said that forcing a woman to continue with her pregnancy would not only be a violation of her bodily integrity, but also aggravate her mental trauma. The apex court also ordered a medical board, to be formed by senior doctors of teams to check whether it is safe to conduct an abortion on the women and submit a report within a week. Right. So this is the issue which surfaced, and a very important issue on which we can expect a question in the examination. So I'll just discuss with you MTP Act of 1971, which allowed women to seek abortions as part of reproductive right and gender justice. But in 1971 Act, only married women were allowed the right of abortion. Right? But in 2021, it is being amended, and now even unmarried women are being given the right of safe abortions. Number one. Number two, this amendment to 1971 MTP Act also raised the upper limit of MTP from 20 weeks to 24 weeks. Right. So earlier, abortions were restricted just to 20 weeks of pregnancy. Right. But now they have extended it to 24 weeks. Getting my point? And 24 weeks is almost 6 months. Right. So that means till 6 months, the say abortions are legal and it can be done under the medical supervision. And this extension is also being for women, including rape survivors, victims of incest, differently abled women, and minors. Now, is 20-week window enough? Now, this case actually explored that whether we should, because it was a precursor to the recent amendment, because earlier it was 20-week window, but now they've extended it to 24 weeks. That means 6 months, right? So this actually, the pictorial representation on the screen talks about the 20-week window, and was it sufficient or was it enough? Now, this article explores that most fetal abnormalities are detected only after 19th week, right? And by the time parents decide to abort, it is too late, because many couples, many women also abort because of the fetal abnormalities, right? And they are being detected only after the 19th week, right? Many places in India don't have advanced ultrasound and antenatal care, and due to which some abnormalities are detected very, very late. Right? So you already crossed 20 week, right? The moment you cross 20-week time frame or window, you actually, surpass the MTP Act of 1971, right? I'm talking before the amendment of 2021. But now definitely it's a very good move. They have increased the time window from 20 weeks to 24 weeks, right? So that the couple or the parents would get sufficient time to decide over abortion. Now, if I compare it with other countries, well, European countries like France, UK, Italy, and even Nepal allow abortion even after 20 weeks if the fetal abnormalities are discovered. Well, there are 23 countries, including Canada, Germany, Vietnam, which allow abortion at any time if the request is based on social or medical reasons. Right? So this is a comparative analysis of the various abortion policies across the globe. Well, MTP Act of 1971, and I expect a question on this, uh, has a and is based on the idea that terminating a pregnancy cannot originate by choice, right? So by choice, if you are to abort the pregnancy, it is not allowed. It is purely circumstantial. The circumstances, uh, you know, uh, 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 under which you're allowed to abort are being mentioned below, right? And only under these circumstances the doctor can perform an abortion in these circumstances. The first is if the pregnancy would be harmful to the life of the patient, right, or affects her physical or mental health, correct? So let's say the mother is ill, she's suffering from some ailment or disease, and the pregnancy would be harmful, would be would threaten the life of the mother. So in those cases, doctor can, give the go ahead to abortion. The second situation is when there is a good chance that the child would suffer from physical or mental abnormalities. Right, that means it's being found in the ultrasound, etc., that the fetus is abnormal, and there is a valid proof for that, and and this is also a valid ground for conducting abortion. The third is if pregnancy occurred as a result of failure of contraception. So very, very important, right? But this was only limit applicable to married women. Getting my point? So it was only for the married couple as far as the MTP Act of 1971 is concerned. So if there is a failure of contraception, uh, in the married couple, then also in if the pregnancy occurs, then that can also be aborted under MTP Act of 1971. What about unmarried couple? Right. So this was something which had to be explored. Right. And in the various judgment in the court, right, and even the MTP Act Amendment 2021 has substituted the term husband with partner. The moment it substitutes the term husband with partner, the clear signal that the law now covers the unmarried women also. Right. Number one. Number two, at the same time, the apex court has already, recognized the live-in relationships, right, and and that includes the premarital sex. Right? So therefore, the court has clearly said that denying an unmarried woman the right to safe abortion violates her Article 21. The fourth situation, or circumstance under which MTP Act can be used is if a pregnancy is a result of sexual assault or rape. So in these circumstances, MTP Act or abortion can be done. Now moving ahead. Now in the amendment to MTP Act 2021, now two doctors, need to be satisfied that the conditions have been fulfilled. Now there are some guidelines for illegal abortions. Any abortion under 4 to 5 months which does not fulfill the four conditions which I just discussed before is attracts the jail term of 3 years. If abortion is over 5 months pregnancy and not fulfilling the above conditions, the jail term is 7 years. If abortion is without the consent of the pregnant women, both the doctor and the who is performing the abortion would be punished, and the jail term is 10 years. If the abortion results in death, you know, if the patient dies because of a forced abortion or an abortion carried out by an unskilled person, the doctor who conducted the operation can be punished with the jail term of 10 years. Right? So, in this sense, consent of the person is very much required. Well, there are various steps taken by the central government for safe abortions. For example, the government provides safe and comprehensive abortion care, which is CAC. Now, CAC services, are being given to women in health facilities, and they are something under the heading of reproductive, maternal, newborn, child, and adolescent health program of National Health Mission, where counseling, clinical assessment, pain management, post-abortion, managing complications, uterine evacuation, so on and so forth, post-abortion contraceptions, etc., are being uh, listed. So moving ahead. Now, moving to the next news article on the screen, talking about monkeypox. Now we know that the state of Kerala has witnessed two confirmed cases of monkeypox, and therefore the state government has issued alert in the state about, and it is screening all the travelers coming from Middle East and African nations. It has now monkeypox is definitely the cause of worry. Now, an article appeared a few days back in the newspaper talking about the monkeypox virus and its origins and outbreaks. Well, it's spread across 20 countries, and there are almost 200 to 300 cases, even in UK, Spain, and Portugal. However, there are no deaths reported till the time. It comes from the pox virus family, first identified in monkeys way back in 1958. Now, the first human case of monkeypox was identified in 1970 from Democratic Republic of Congo, and its outbreak, it has animal to human as well as human to human transmission. Very, very important. That means it's a zoonotic virus. It also has human to human transmission. Now, since the transmission occurs only with close contact, that's the reason why the outbreaks have been, in many cases, self-limiting, right? So that means its transmission is very, very low as compared to coronavirus. Getting my point? So the first difference between COVID-19 and monkeypox is the transmission rate of monkeypox is very low. Number one. Number two, the death rate is also very, very less. However, the incubation period is high. Now, the monkeys are possibly the only incidental hosts. The actual reservoir is not known. It is believed that rodents and non-human primates could be potential reservoirs. Well, we must understand the second difference between monkeypox virus and COVID-19. See, monkeypox is a DNA virus, and on the other hand, COVID is a RNA virus, right? And because it is a DNA, because monkeypox is a DNA virus, the rate of mutation is very, very low. That means only around one to two mutations per year, right? So mutations means, for example, COVID has various mutations. For example, Delta variant, Alpha variant, Beta variant, now Omicron variant, Omicron B1.5, so on and so forth. Right? So those are called as mutations. Right? Now, when you compare mutations of coronavirus versus monkeypox virus, you'll see that the mutations in the monkeypox virus are very, very less. Why? Because it is a DNA virus. And on the other hand, COVID-19 is a RNA virus, right? SARS-CoV-2. Well, there are two distinct clades of virus: the Congo Basin clade and the West African clade. Well, now how to protect ourselves from monkeypox virus? Now, the only vaccine that we have today, which can provide protection to monkeypox virus, is smallpox vaccine. Now, although smallpox we eradicated, I mean, it's already been eradicated from many countries, including India. And in India, we eradicated smallpox in the year 1980. And post that, the vaccines also were discontinued. However, emergency stockpiles of the vaccines are being maintained by many countries. Now, those younger individuals, who are yet to receive the smallpox vaccine, are the potential, are highly susceptible to the monkeypox virus. So that is the reason why it is more prevalent in the younger individuals. So you would also be knowing that it was identified in India, in Kerala, and that individual was 35 years in age. Now, it is a zoonotic disease, as being explained. The symptoms are different from that of chickenpox. It is more severe. Chickenpox also has fever, malaise, rashes on the body, headache, but then the symptoms are much more severe. Now, it also, transmits through direct contact with the blood, bodily fluids, or cutaneous or mucosal lesions. Now, this is how it transmits uh, from the primary animals, typically rodents, through bites, scratches, consumption of bushmeat. It also has human-to-human transmission, but limited just to close contact with infected respiratory tract secretions or skin lesions. Now, the symptoms are clear: intense headache, fever, swollen lymph nodes, backache, chills, exhaustion, muscle aches, rashes, and the illness normally lasts for 2 to 3 weeks. Now, students, coming to the editorial section. Well, a very important article surfaced in the editorial section of the Hindu. Now it talked about the Sri Lankan crisis and how this crisis, is a silver lining for India, in the sense that India, it is an opportune time for India to, capitalize its relation and build this relation with Sri Lanka. Well, India was the first country, to bail, or to give a financial assistance to crisis-ridden Sri Lanka, and the financial assistance given by India was at the tune of $3.8 billion, right? And they've given through various loans, swaps, and grants. In this sense, it's India's largest bilateral aid program in recent times. Very, very important. Now, India has definitely is giving humanitarian aid, and this can be linked now to deepen trade and investment linkages. Uh, when the economy of Sri Lanka would recover, possibly after 2 to 3 years. Now, now we know that the economy of Sri Lanka has, almost contracted by at least 6% in 2022, and almost three-quarter of the almost 3 to 4 lakh people are becoming the new poor in the debt-ridden Sri Lanka. Now, Sri Lanka is also facing challenges in getting foreign aid, right? So there are many institutions which are actually, hesitant in assisting, in giving financial assistance to Sri Lanka, as 60% of the world's poorest countries are, are themselves experiencing distresses. So after COVID-19, various countries across the world are experiencing debt distresses. Financial, financial debts have risen, and there are prospects of second global recession, imminent in 3 years from here, and it could dampen enthusiasm to support Sri Lanka, right? So there are many countries, who are hesitating to support or to give financial assistance to Sri Lanka because of these reasons. So in this sense, India, has done a very good thing, and it is quite appreciable. At the outset, it has given $3.28 billion financial assistance, and in this sense, India was the first responder to Sri Lanka's desperate call for foreign aid to tackle the crippling debt and economic crisis. And it would also strengthen Prime Minister Modi's neighborhood first policy. Now, when the Sri Lankan economy would recover, because now we have a new president, Ranil Wickremesinghe, and Gunawardena may be the next prime minister in the coming days. Now, it will take time, definitely 2 to 3 years, but India could, deepen its trade and investment linkages in Sri Lanka. Look, students, Sri Lanka during Rajapaksa's time, the Gotabaya Rajapaksa, Mahinda Rajapaksa, slipped into the hands of China, and China was investing heavily in the infrastructure development activities in Sri Lanka, right? So it got tilted towards China, and India lost that opportunity, right? So this is a a opportune time for India to actually, to walk deep in Sri Lanka and strengthen or deepen its trade and investment linkages. Well, if because if India doesn't help, so it may lead to regional imbalance, right? And there is a potential security risk to India, and it may lead to a flood of refugees across the Park Strait, causing, administrative problems in India, right? And even the southern states of India, want the central government to assist the debt-ridden Sri Lanka. Now we know that China, which has not yet disclosed its financial assistance to Sri Lanka, and possibly it is hesitant in assisting Sri Lanka because they believe that and they think that if, in fact, that if they do so, then it would set a precedent where other countries would also start coming up for debt waiver, and it would set a precedent. So therefore, China is also hesitant in going ahead. So Sri Lanka has fueled, I mean, the crisis has fueled a debt trap narrative, and China is facing a dilemma in bailing out Sri Lanka. It do not want its reputation to be tarnished by bailing out a floundering economy. So Sri Lanka, which was heavily dependent on China, and it got tilted towards China, is now, it has its a friend, and as they say, a friend in need is a friend indeed. So it's a very uh, good time for India to build or strengthen relation with Sri Lanka by assisting or giving humanitarian aid. So an article to be read. Now moving to the next news article about the Pegasus battle. Now we know that Pegasus has been making the news for the past few years, and it is a spyware which attacked various cell phones of some targeted journalists, uh, some ministers, and academicians. It's being said that, and in fact, it's being alleged that the government used Pegasus to spy over the journalists, and some of the academicians. Now, the case went into the court, and this article actually, explores, the surveillance framework, right? Because what we have today, is IT Act. Correct. We do have IT Act of 2002, and then there are other acts, which actually, for example, Indian Telegraph Act of 1885 and IT Act of 2000. Now, now it empowers the government to surveil. That means these acts has, given or concentrated the surveillance powers in the hands of the executive, and do not contain any independent oversight provisions, be it judicial or parliamentary. So the IT Acts, etc., have also given the surveillance power to the executive or the central government. And because these days many spywares are being developed, and because of the advancement in the technology, and these acts are today outdated, and because they do not respond to the modern day surveillance industry, right? Now, Pegasus, as I said, is a spyware, and it's been developed by the Israeli company, NSO Group, and in fact, it's being said that by some thinkers that Pegasus is India's Watergate movement, which held the then United States President Richard Nixon, against whom the impeachment charges were also constituted. Well, the case also went to the Supreme Court, and the court, in fact, has done all the forensic analysis and had found that their phones, were infected. In fact, a technical committee is being recently formed, October 2021, to examine whether the spyware, had been used on Indian citizens. Now, after the 8 months, even after the 8 months have been passed, the committee has yet to arrive at any findings. Now, guys, just at the end of July 2022, when the top, while the top court, the cases are now listed by a technical committee, by the end of July 2022, but the top court is still waiting for the report, right? So it's consuming too much time, and there is overhaul of surveillance laws, which is the need of the hour, and uh, even the proposed data protection bill, which is being sent to the JPC, Joint Parliamentary Committee, do not address the issue of surveillance. Why? Because instead of the new draft law, the draft data protection law had exempted the government related to select agencies for application of the law. Right? For example, the various law enforcement agencies, intelligence agencies are being exempted from the data protection law. Right? That means they have the powers to surveil over your data. And you know that Pegasus, as a spyware, is able to read the information from your cell phones even without your knowledge. Something called as zero-click attacks. That means even without the knowledge of the consumer or the customer, the spyware would enter into the system and would steal all the information and would send to a third party, agency. So therefore, it is a very big threat, and it actually also, infringes the right to privacy, which is was being held as a fundamental right under Article 21 under by Justice Puttaswamy case. Well, even the CERT-in, which is the Computer Emergency Response Team of India, which is the premier uh, cybersecurity agency, has also remained silent. So the author is saying that even India, even the data protection law is, full of flaws. Even the revised one, the draft data protection bill, which is being sent to the JPC, and in the recently conducted Freedom in the World report, India's status has degraded. Right? Now, this report talks about the Freedom Index, and it has changed India's status from free to partly free. Getting my point? So India has, degraded or slipped from the status of free to partly free in 2021. Right? So it is a very important indicator and a cause of worry. The surveillance industry is becoming increasingly accessible, and the nature of surveillance is exponentially intrusive in the absence of immediate and far-reaching surveillance reforms. You know, so therefore, what we require is an overhaul of the surveillance system. There are far-reaching surveillance reforms which are being required because the right to privacy, otherwise, right to privacy may soon become obsolete. Right? A very important article on Pegasus. This is how some details are being mentioned, which you all at this juncture know. Pegasus. And about the case, Puttaswamy case of 2019, which held that right to privacy is a fundamental right under Article 21. Right. So I hope you enjoyed the session. Stay tuned for all the live daily news analysis sessions. Press the bell icon for regular updates and post any query which comes to your mind in the comment box. We will be free to answer all your queries. Wish you all the best. See you in the next session. Good day. Goodbye.